So then we are back talking all things Chesterfield after a bit of a break, just over a month or so, just while everybody went off on their post-season holidays. Managed to get away for a little bit myself, but I'm back now and fully focused on the 25-26 season to come. Of course, we are now in July, which means pre-season friendlies are right around the corner, and for the Spireites, their schedule begins, as it typically tends to, with an away fixture at Matlock Town that is coming this coming Saturday at the time of recording. So with that in mind, it's a good time to sit down, take stock of what Chesterfield have done so far, how it leaves their squad looking with about a month or so to go until the start of the league season, and what clues that might give us in terms of what Paul Cook and co are looking to do for the campaign ahead. But just before we do that, just a massive thank you to anybody who has supported some of the stuff that we've already done over the course of this kind of post-off pre-season kind of period, whichever exactly how you turn the period that we're in at the moment. We've done a few pieces on the players that Chesterfield have signed. You can see the 5 names there, the ones that are on the top of your list, and we're talking about them all in this video. But if you want to learn a bit more about them in a little bit more depth, there are some pieces over there. The most recent one being the one for striker Lee Bonnis, which has been one of the most supported bits of content that I've ever done on any platform. So massive thank you to all of you that supported that and made that such a success and gave me really the motivation to keep going on with those sorts of things. And if you want to see the ones we've done already, there will be more to come off the back of that, but if you want to see the few that we've done already, they are all available over on Medium. The link to my Medium page will be down in the description below, as will the links to Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, and all those other various places where you can find me when I am not here on YouTube, because I have been active, but now we are back with this video, with this kind of squad update for Chesterfield. And without further ado, without any more admin, let's dive straight in to that and start. I think the logical place to start is with the transfers that have been made since we spoke last, and if we're going to go through them chronologically, what a way to kick things off it was. Of course, took a little bit of a while to get going, as we say, people jetting off on holiday, players, agents, managers, all the different parties involved in transfers. So things were a little bit quiet for a little bit, and a few fans might have started to get a little bit restless. But when this first transfer came through to kick things off, it was well worth the wait. And it was the return, of course, of Dylan Markande. Now, for those of you that are just jumping on to the Chesterfield story at this kind of point and don't know the history between Chesterfield and Markande, Dylan Markande was a player they had on loan for the first half of the 24-25 campaign, and he was pretty standout in truth, on loan from Blackburn Rovers. Probably was definitely in contention, if not the kind of front runner at the halfway stage for Chesterfield's Player of the Season, or at least on course for a decent amount of nominations. And so good were his performances, in fact, that his parent club Blackburn did decide to recall him and test him out in League One with Leyton Orient, which was a spell that started pretty well for Markande. Actually, he got himself a couple of goals, but with the strength of Leyton Orient's team, of course, they're a team that reached the League One playoff final, narrowly losing out to Charlton Athletic. He couldn't really quite nail a consistent place down, and as it came towards the end of his time there, he was really reduced to bit part minutes off the bench. And I think that is important context when it comes to his return to Chesterfield, because had he have been as impressive as consistently in League 2 with Chesterfield, in League 1 for Leyton Orient as he'd been in League 2 for Chesterfield, I think there's every likelihood that we would have seen Markande going to League 1. That's not to say there wasn't League 1 interest even after that spell. Orient, there were rumours that a few League 1 clubs were looking at him, but he decided to return to Chesterfield, and I think that kind of spell at Orient, combined with the success of his prior spell with the Spireites, probably offers the explanation for that, because I think he is absolutely a League 1 level player, and potentially even a Championship level player. He did play a decent amount of football when he was at Blackburn, albeit not massively a consistent part of the starting 11, but was a frequent squad member for a decent chunk of his time there. So I think he's absolutely got the quality to play in League 1, and with a bit of refinement, definitely the quality to play, the potential at least to play in the Championship. However, the reason I think he's dropped back down to League 2, back down to Chesterfield, is just because of the success of that initial spell, and it showed him that it was a place where he would play, he would be a big part of the system. He's playing in a system where players are given freedom, he'd be given a lot of the ball, he'd be given the perfect platform to showcase his ability. He's already got the support from that prior spell, of the coaching staff, of his fellow players, of the supporters. I think this just made a lot of sense. Yes, he could have taken a little bit of a risk and gone, I've probably got the ability to go and play in League One, but if it doesn't work out again, he's going to be in a similar position, kind of scrapping to get on the pitch as he's at Leyton Orient. I don't think there's any chance of that at Chesterfield. He's going to be a big player. He's going to come in as a starter, and he's going to have the chance to impress following this permanent return. And it is a return on a 3-year deal, which again is absolutely massive for both player and particularly for the football club as well. Is it a significant commitment? Of course it is. He won't have come necessarily cheap, and it is a long contract, but all the indications are that this is the kind of player that you invest some money in, particularly coming on a free transfer. Of course, there will be kind of different various fees involved, but as a base rate transfer, it's a free transfer, and that is absolutely massive. I think this is absolutely the kind of player you give that contract to, because if he comes back to Chesterfield, he lights it up in League Two as he did for the 6 months or so he was here before, and it progresses to a point where he's impressing that much that it is hard for Chesterfield to keep him. They've now got a couple of years now where they can stand firm and ask for a pretty big fee, which will help them progress as a football club as they look to meet this objective of becoming a little bit more self-sufficient, not as reliant on the investment of the Kirks, and looking to, not that investment looks like it's going to be going away or there's any concerns about that, but of course, you want to be putting the building blocks in place so that as they go forward, the club can, if not sustain itself, definitely move more towards that end. And having sellable assets like Markande, like Armando Dobra, who's still here, like maybe a couple of the other players that we will talk about shortly, is a big part of that wider vision. And again, I think this is a massive one for Chesterfield as a football team, but also more broadly as a football club. And people have every reason to be excited. And what a way this was to kick off the summer. So I had a bit more of an in-depth dive onto Markande there. I don't think we'll talk necessarily as much about some of the other players, but Markande was definitely the marquee arrival. He was the first arrival, so it only felt right to have a little bit more of an in-depth discussion about him. But moving on, things started to progress very, very quickly after that first transfer, and the second man to come in was Adam Lewis. On a free transfer from Morecambe. And this is a really interesting one, actually, because he comes in, he is versatile, he could play a number of different positions, and indeed did for Morecambe last season. But I think the billing is as him as a left-back, and I think that is probably where you're going to see him play most commonly in a Chesterfield shirt, which creates a little bit of a conundrum. Really, because Chesterfield already had a very reliable left-back in Lewis Gordon at the club. Of course, came in last summer from Bristol Rovers, was very, very solid in his first 2 or 3 months, but then, like so many Chesterfield players last season, picked up a bit of a lengthy injury that did derail him a little bit, but even towards the back end of the season, he started to rebuild that fitness, and again, was largely solid. So this is an interesting one, and it's particularly interesting because they are two kind of different profiles of player, because Gordon, on the one hand, is maybe a little bit more balanced or reserved when it comes to kind of the defensive side of the game. Rather, he's just as likely to maybe tuck in alongside the two centre-backs, and he did a lot for Paul Cook's side last season, than he is to bomb down the line. Whereas Lewis, as alluded to, he's very versatile. He has played a decent chunk of football for Morecambe as a winger, and as you would expect from that, he is very much a front-footed player. He wants to fly up the line, get on the overlap, and whip those crosses into the box. So two very, very different sorts of player here. Two players that you would imagine. Lewis played a lot of football at Morecambe last season. Gordon played a lot of football when he was fit for Chesterfield last season. So they're two players that you would imagine are going to want to get onto the pitch a decent amount. So it's going to be interesting to see how Chesterfield manage that. But yeah, it's very interesting, but I think it's a long old season in League Two, and as Chesterfield learn, injuries do crop up throughout the season, and it's nice to have that depth. It's nice to have a little bit of tactical versatility as well, and having two options to offer something a little bit different. So going to be interesting to see who has the starting spot from the off and how that informs what Chesterfield are trying to do. And what Chesterfield are trying to do is going to form a little bit more of the later portion of this video. So I'll park that discussion for now. We'll leave Lewis as the starter, because as we say, I've got a little bit of a running theory, and we'll have a little bit of a look at that later. But we now move on to a player that came just hours after Lewis, and that is Ryan Stirk. And again, this is a pretty big transfer for Chesterfield. Again, I will make reference to the kind of medium pieces that we did just one more time. I try not to plug them constantly, but here it feels relevant because we spoke about there how much Chesterfield had lost in terms of potential defensive midfield options for Chesterfield. It was probably a need that they wanted anyway, somebody a little bit younger, a little bit more energetic. Stirk is definitely that, but even outside of that, well, kind of following that really, there was a need to kind of reinforce the numbers here, particularly after the summer. When we left off, it wasn't quite sure what Ollie Banks was doing He'd been offered a contract. There was rumours that he'd be going to York. That ultimately did materialise. Although Banks has played a little bit further forward towards the end of his time at Chesterfield, he was definitely predominantly in his career a defensive midfielder, and definitely an option there should Chesterfield have wanted it. When I rounded off that retain list video, I'm pretty sure Darren Oldacre's move to Swindon Town hadn't been 100% confirmed. That also now has. Jensen Metcalf was a player we spoke about in that retain list video. Had a great second half of the season for Chesterfield on loan from Everton. He's now gone back and has not yet returned. A little bit of rumours, but I don't know if that's more hope than expectation from people that he could return. And also Mike Jones as well. Of course, didn't play much football last season, but was a valuable member of the squad, was a defensive midfielder. He has now retired. So that's 4 names there that Chesterfield have lost in the defensive midfield department. They needed to refresh it, and they have done with Ryan Stirk. And I think this is another very, very big transfer for Chesterfield in terms of getting those numbers in, but getting the kind of player that they needed as well, because Sturkey is a player that is very combative. He covers a lot of ground, but he's also very technically sound as well. So a position of need, a profile of need, and Chesterfield have gone out and addressed it with a player who, of course, beat them to the League 2 playoff final last season. So he's got experience playing in League 2, playing in the upper echelons of League 2. And this makes this, I think, another pretty smart pickup for Chesterfield. And now we move on to Zach Hemming, goalkeeper, which is a very interesting transfer. This one, an undisclosed fee paid by Chesterfield, and he's been given a lengthy contract. I believe that's a 3-year one as well. Now, I doubt it myself, but I'm pretty sure that is a 3-year contract for Zach Hemming. And that immediately suggests a will to address what has been a bit of an interesting position for Chesterfield, because not since Tommy Lee, really, who played the majority of his career now over a decade ago for Chesterfield, have they had really a consistent number one. That's not to say they haven't had good or decent keepers over that period, but not really one that's stuck around for more than like a season and a bit, really. So there's obviously a will there to try and nail down one of those core positions of any team. They will hope that investment in Hemming gives them that. Of course, this now does create an interesting dynamic with Ryan Boots, who, again, was another one of those when we left off the retain list video, wasn't 100% sure whether he was going to sign. He has, alongside, just to address it while we're here, Carl McFadzean and John Fleck as well, wherever he's hiding on this tactics board. I am now desperately... There he is. There's John Fleck. Sorry, I had a minute there. I kind of threw all these players just kind of on the side of this tactics board and wasn't sure where they all were. But yes, Boot, Fleck and McFadzean, the 3 of those 7 that have stayed. We'll address this now. Obviously, Banks, we've already spoke about. Ash Palmer has also, like Banks, gone to York City. And then the 2 at the bottom here, Janoy Donassian and Tyrone Williams, are the 2 that are a little bit unknown at the moment. And they are still, by all accounts, training with the club. But that might be to help, particularly where Williams was concerned. Of course, suffered that horrible injury away at Swindon Town. That may be more to help where rehabilitation from injuries that they suffered is concerned. Whether we see them again, we'll have to wait and see. But that addresses that. But bringing it back round to where we started this, brings us back round to, of course, Ryan Boots. And he has signed a contract extension. That does give Chesterfield 2 goalkeepers. Now, you'd imagine, given the financial commitment, that they'll be looking at Hemming as the number 1. But if Boot is going to be the number 2, that is a very, very solid option to have. Some might have been happy enough with him as the number 1, given how strongly he finished last season. But either way, I think this is good work by Chesterfield to get that goalkeeper position kind of sorted nice and early. It's been a position where they've been scrambling around a little bit for the last 2 or 3 seasons, whether it's to bring in a backup, bring in a first choice, and then when the season kicks off, they're not quite sure what they want to do. They're both in at the start of pre-season. That gives them a nice long time to battle that out and work that out, and either way, you'd think they've got themselves a decent option in either Hemming or Boot. Of course, Hemming comes with slightly mixed reviews. Very popular up in Scotland with St Mirren. Not so much. Another one that spent some time on loan at Leyton Orient. Not necessarily had it as enjoyable a time there, but I think there is potential for this to be a good purchase for Chesterfield. As we say, particularly if it brings them some long-term stability in a core position, which they have liked for several seasons now. And finally, we move on to signing number 5. We referenced him briefly, Lee Bonus from ADO Den Haag in the Dutch second tier. Actually, a Northern Irish striker, Northern Irish international, like his fellow teammate Will Grigg. And this one is very, very interesting. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about this because if you've seen this video, there's a good chance you've already seen the written piece we did. And as we say, that was massively well supported and genuinely so grateful for that. But anyway, enough about that. But yeah, I think this is a very interesting signing in Lee Bonus. Definitely some things to like, and it's gonna be interesting to see another kind of battle for the spot there with Will Grigg. But I think investing in a younger option was definitely a sensible move from Chesterfield, because Grigg, in both of the last 2 seasons now, has had a lengthy spell on the sidelines. Of course, in the season in the National League where he scored so many goals, he wasn't actually on the pitch for the game when they won the title because he was injured for the kind of last 2 or 3 months of the season, and then again suffered a pretty lengthy injury when they were promoted up into League 2, kind of around Christmas time. Was out from kind of December up until around March or April. So I think it would have been a little bit naive for Chesterfield to go into the season and think that he wouldn't have injury problems next season. This now probably gives them the chance to manage that a little bit better as well. So if they've got 3 games in a week or whatever it might be, maybe a pitch they're not particularly liking the look of, they can sit there and go, okay, we'll sit Will Grigg for this one, we'll give Bonus the chance, and we can rotate them in and out and keep 2 quality options fit all season long. That will certainly be the objective. And I can hear a lot of you screaming now, what about Paddy Madden? Because of course he's another striker, another very well-known striker in the EFL on Chesterfield's books. We'll get to him in a minute and in this next section, because now we've talked about those 5 signings, what they might potentially bring. We're now going to have a look. In fact, I am going to put Bonus kind of just on the bench for now. We'll give Grigg the spot for now, but as I say, I'm sure it'll be very interesting and a very competitive battle for who claims that number 9 shirt come the start of the season. And the pre-season to come should give us a decent idea of how that's going to shape up. But now we are into a little bit more of the speculative portion of the video. And I will say this is not kind of some kind of concrete insider kind of thing. This is just how I'm reading where this Chesterfield team is going and what they might do given some of the players that they've got, some of the positions that they've targeted, some of the players and profiles that they've brought in. And the key central idea to me of this, to me, is I think we're going to see quite a narrow front 3, as well, narrow attacking 3 behind the striker, should I say, for Chesterfield this season. When you look at the fact that they brought in Markande, that they've got Armando Dobra, that Liam Mandeville is still here, for example, that they have moved to bring in another striker, which suggests that maybe Paddy Madden isn't going to see many minutes up front. Is there a solution there where you can still play Madden, where you can play Markande and Dobra and still give minutes to Mandeville? And I think that this narrow attacking midfield 3 could be the way to go. Because Markande on the right, Dobra on the left, and another big part of this as well is the introduction of Adam Lewis into the team, so that they can get up, hold the width, get down the byline, skip down the line, and whip some crosses in. That then allows Dobra to come in field, because I think he's a superb player, Armando Dobra, absolutely deservingly Chesterfield's Player of the Year last year. But he can be, I think if he's forced to stay too wide, you can kind of push him wide and limit him a little bit, whereas if you allow him to drift into this half spaces, which is this left-hand half space, which is the kind of position he plays when he's playing in that more central 10 position anyway, if you allow him to drift in there, that's when he can be really, really effective, because he's got a lot more freedom in terms of the angles available to him, and then of course he's got that dribbling, that low centre of gravity that makes him so hard to knock off the ball. And similarly for Markande on the other side, 2 very, very really good carriers of the ball, very technical players. They can drive and open up this central area for Chesterfield, which is absolutely massive. And then you've still got Lewis there on the left-hand side to provide the threat. And then in the middle, if you have somebody like Paddy Madden, and it's an interesting one because this was billed a little bit when he first joined the club from Stockport County. There was told that he had played that kind of second striker or number 10 role, played that little bit deeper where he can be that little bit more technical. And I think it could really suit him, because the one thing I think that's letting him down, not to sound too harsh, but letting him down a little bit, is that he is at 35, perfectly understandably, kind of physically deteriorating a little bit. But if you drop him back into this position where it's a lot more about kind of technical ability than physical ability to kind of get on the line and battle with strikers, which you'll want from Grigg and Bonus up top. If you allow Madden to play that little bit deeper, kind of float technically, and then you give him a little bit of freedom, because if you're playing against a back four, you could maybe have Grigg pinning the centre-backs and give Madden the opportunity to roam and get involved here. Or if you're playing a back three, you could maybe play that a little bit further forward and have both doing a little bit of a pinning job, which then opens up the centre of the pitch for Markande and Dobra, opens up that space for them to pick up the ball, float a little bit, and drive forward. Madden there can occupy a centre-back or occupy a defensive midfielder, depending on what sort of setup that you're facing. And then, of course, he can arrive into the box and still score some goals. Because he did still get on the score sheet 5 times for Chesterfield last season. I think he did show that knack here and there of kind of arriving at the perfect time, getting the goal. And I think he could absolutely still offer all of that for Chesterfield, but maybe not quite suited to what they want in a striker. But with these two players either side of him, I think he could be very good in that number 10 position. But now we move a little bit further back. And of course, we got kind of the centre-backs of Che Dunkley, and you would imagine, for the moment at least, Kyle McFadden, but we will speak about that very, very shortly. And the next thing I want to talk about really is, and again, I think if you're having an overlapper on the left-hand side, you're playing this now in front three, you're probably going to want somebody on the right-hand side as well. Now, who that is going to be, I don't think it's 100% clear at the moment, particularly when you've got Janoy Dinassian, for example, still kind of working his way back to fitness, working out what's going to happen with him. Chesterfield do have 4 or 5 players on their books, really, that could play in that right-back role, but not necessarily one that really stands out as he's going to be the starter on week 1 of the league season, that home game against Barrow. I think at the moment, if you're looking for that overlap, Avonte Daly-Campbell is probably the best profile for that at this moment in time, but I wouldn't be 100% confident really that he's going to be the starter, and that's why I'm gonna identify this as a potential area which Chesterfield could still focus on when it comes to the kind of next month or so. We'll probably reconvene for another one of these videos at the start of August, just to see what pre-season has taught us, what more business Chesterfield have done, and whether they've got any clear idea whether any of this is going to come to fruition. But I think at the moment, Daly-Campbell is probably the best option, or kind of the best profile fit on that right-hand side for that role. But we really will have to wait and see on that one. Of course, Liam Mandeville played there, and he did a good job filling in, and he actually played ahead of Daly-Campbell, which is what makes me think, is this what we're going to see? Because it's a bit strange that Daly-Campbell didn't manage to work his way back into the team. As far as we're aware, he did have a period out injured, but as far as we're aware, he was back fit towards the back end of the campaign, but did not force his way back into the team. It was Mandeville filling in there. But again, if you're looking for this outright overlapper, I don't think that's necessarily Mandeville's kind of strength. He'd be better off playing probably in one of these 3 positions here, where he's in the middle of the pitch. I think that's what best suits his skill set, and in fact, even when he played at right back, you would see him kind of inverting inside Michael Ola-Kigbe and playing in those more central areas. So, yes, and I think just to kind of close on that, I think with Mandeville at right back, you would like to think that Chesterfield will be able to move away from that this season. He did a very good job. He's a very willing player, and I think many people were very appreciative of his service in filling in an area where Chesterfield were really light on numbers, and it's not an easy task at all. But at the end of the day, he's not a right back, and you saw a couple of times where it does feel like a little bit like he's almost, I don't want to say an accident waiting to happen, because that sounds immensely, immensely harsh, and he is a very reliable player regardless of where he plays. But you saw it a couple of times when he got up against those players that got a little bit more pace, whether it's a winger or a wing back. The 2 that spring to mind really are Amari Patrick at Tranmere and Liam Gordon at Walsall in the first leg of that playoff semi-final. Those players have got a little bit more trickery, got a little bit more pace. Mandeville can get caught out for his lack of outright pace over the ground. So I think if you're going to see Mandeville this season, it will be in these central areas, which is why I am going to put Daly-Campbell as the placeholder in that right-back spot for now. But again, that's kind of the first position of a few that we're going to talk about where I think we could still see some recruitment from Chesterfield. In fact, I'll address the next one now, because I think there is an opinion, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, or as close to a hot take as you're ever going to get from me. I try to be as measured as possible when I'm doing these videos, but I think given the quality of Che Dunkley and Kyle McFadden, who are 2 very, very good players undeniably for League Two level, and I think if Chesterfield did go into that this season rather with that as their defensive pairing, that would be a very encouraging situation for them to be in, given their outright quality. And I think because of that, a lot of people have accepted that that is going to be the case, but I'm not 100% sure. I do still think we might see somebody come in to play as the left-sided centre-half. And I think what we might see is maybe Dunkley, maybe McFadzean, one of the two. I think probably more likely McFadzean if I was going to say, but again, these are just hypotheticals, so it really is tough to say. But I think we could see him basically play a little bit of a similar role to how Jamie Grimes did at times last season, where if Chesterfield was struggling a little bit, if they were in games where they needed to be a little bit more physical, have a little bit more of an experienced head that's not afraid to get in and get a bit rough, etc., etc., that might be when we see Dunkley and McFadzean play together. But I think in some of the other games where maybe the more technical aspects are the priority, we might see somebody on the left side of defence. To kind of partner Che Dunkley as that real kind of anchor and kind of leader of the back line. And now I want to kind of close off by adding the final piece into this puzzle, if you like. And again, it's to do with how I think the kind of Spireites might line up in possession. Because I'm wondering if they have for a while tended to drift towards a 3 in possession. As we said, often Lewis Gordon would drop back as one of the fullbacks alongside the two centre-halves. But I wonder if this season we might see, with the kind of idea of them playing 2 flying fullbacks, a narrow 3, we might see one of the defensive midfielders drop in. For now, I'm going to say that could be Tom Naylor. I mean, of course, he has played as a centre-back, so he should be pretty comfortable on that back line. And also, he does have the ability to kind of spring forward and maybe get involved in some rotations in the games where you've got teams really camped on the edge of their own box. These two players can kind of release off. And again, that's why I think you might want somebody that's a little bit younger, a little bit more athletic on the left side as well, to be able to spring off and get involved in an attacking sense as well. But yes, I'm going to put Naylor there for now. But again, I do think this is maybe a position where they could look for something a little bit different in terms of that position. Then you kind of leave Sturck here to really buzz around and break up play. And this all leads kind of to the final blueprint of what I think we're going to see from Chesterfield this season. I think a lot of play could go through these wider players looking to feed the ball. You want some players that are able to kind of not necessarily play massively extravagant passes, but break the lines, get the ball into Dobra and Markande, who can then drive it forward, driving into the space that's created by these two players here, pinning the kind of defensive midfielders, pinning the centre-backs. Then, if they need to, shifting it wide to these full-backs, who can then whip these crosses in for Grigg, for Madden, for Bonus, whichever one it is, whichever kind of combination it is that's playing as those players. I think that could be Chesterfield's blueprint this season, and we could see them kind of look to build attacks that way and see them score a lot of goals that way as well. But this has been a long video, and I feel like there's been a lot to talk about. Again, we're trying to cover basically a month's news in 20 minutes. So apologies if we've gone on some tangents, if we've kind of got lost along the way. But I think there was a lot to discuss. There's a lot to get excited about from a Chesterfield perspective. And as we say, as they look ahead, still, I say, plenty of time before the season starts. If I was gonna earmark 3 positions to maybe look for something a little bit different, I'd say right back, get that player that can overlap on the right-hand side. If it's not going to be Daley Campbell, which it could be, again, just to return to that one last time, the one example that I think that springs to mind is away at Crewe Alexandra. Chesterfield won 5-0, and of course everybody really played well on that day. But Daley Campbell was a big part of that, because he was really proactive in getting forward, allowing Markande to drift in off the right-hand side. He was playing as a winger, but he was allowed to drift in because Daley Campbell was making those aggressive runs from right back. So he could do it, but it's just really hard to say given how many injury problems he's had, exactly where he is in his development. So if Chesterfield want a little bit more of a sure thing, and not that there ever is such a thing in football, but if Chesterfield want a little bit more of a dependable option, that's an area I think they could target. Maybe a right-sided centre-back. There is a name here that has been linked. I don't want to jinx it by mentioning it, but I think there is a player among the players that's been linked to Chesterfield over the past few days that could be perfect for this role. But I am going to park that until that's made official, because I don't want to jinx it. I've already taken it upon myself to predict a few things in this video. I don't want to kind of add any more margin for error into the mix. And then finally, on this left hand side, maybe somebody a little bit younger again, somebody that's capable of playing those kind of line-breaking passes, which is what you want out of these two players here, playing the ball into Dobra and Markande, allowing them to get on the turn, drive forward, farm the ball out to Lewis and whoever it ends up being on that right-hand side, and then feed these two players and hopefully get them a significant number of goals. So, right back, defensive midfielder, centre-back, left-sided centre-back. Those are the three areas that I'm not going to say Chesterfield absolutely will recruit him, because I don't have a great deal of insight, but that is where, if I was Paul Cook, I'd be kind of focusing a little bit of attention. But anyway, this video has gone on for a long time now, and I know I've got lost at half an hour. This is comfortably the longest video I have ever done on this channel, so thank you very much if you made it all the way through it. I know I got lost, I got stumbly, I got rambly, but yeah, I did just want to kind of have a sit down and discuss everything that's gone on and what might go on for Chesterfield over the next season. But of course, we will have a clearer idea of everything in a month or so's time, and again, I think we will come back for a recap at the start of August, just before that game against Barrow, which actually I think is about a month today. The start of the League 2 season. So we'll come and have a sit down, see what we've learned, see what Chesterfield have done in the January transfer window. January transfer window? That's the July period, rather, of the transfer window. I tell you, recording for this long, it's an interesting experience. But yes, that is it. That is finally it. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you so much for making it through this video, and hopefully I'll see you again very soon. Might be that video in August, or if there's some particularly big news, we might come back beforehand. And then of course, once the season starts, we get back into the groove of doing game by game breakdowns, etc. But for now, that is it. Thank you very much for watching one last time, and hopefully see you very soon. So thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.